On day 17 of this war, the most powerful man in the world went on camera and begged, not negotiated, not threatened, begged. Donald Trump, the President of the United States, stood before reporters and publicly called on China, France, Japan, South Korea, and the United Kingdom to send their warships into the Strait of Hormuz because America cannot keep the world's most critical oil shipping lane open by itself. He warned NATO that it faces a very bad future if allies fail to assist. He complained openly that the United Kingdom showed no enthusiasm. He said he was not happy with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer for initially declining to send military equipment when the war began. The leader of the most expensive military machine in the history of human civilization was publicly scolding his own friends for not showing up to help him. And one by one, those friends said no. Australia said it is not planning to send any ships. Japan said the same. Germany announced it does not see a role for NATO in the Strait at all. The UK offered vague language about working with allies without providing any details whatsoever. France received a tepid mention from Trump himself, who gave an unenthusiastic assessment of Paris's willingness to join. And China, the country Trump specifically called out by name, responded by calling on all sides to immediately stop military operations. That is diplomatic language for a very clear no. Trump later told reporters that numerous countries have told him they are on the way, but he refused to name a single one. Think about what that moment represents. America is 17 days into a war it started. The Strait of Hormuz is effectively closed. Oil prices are surging past $100 a barrel, and Washington cannot get a single confirmed ally to publicly commit to helping it fix the mess. This is not a coalition. This is isolation dressed up as diplomacy. To understand why today matters so much, you have to understand what the Strait of Hormuz actually is and what its closure means for the entire planet. Roughly 20% of the world's seaborne oil and gas passes through this single narrow waterway every single day. Since the war began on February 28th, tanker traffic through the strait has effectively collapsed. Over 150 tankers are anchored in open Gulf waters right now, sitting motionless, waiting for a resolution that is not coming. At least 16 vessels have been attacked in and around the strait, the Arabian Gulf, and the Gulf of Oman since the conflict began. A Thai cargo ship was struck and set ablaze after ignoring warnings from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. 3 crew members from that vessel are still missing. The U.S. destroyed 17 Iranian warships trying to enforce the blockade, and Iran is not backing down. Iran's new Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei issued a direct statement from hiding, saying the Strait of Hormuz should remain closed and that Iran will continue attacking its Gulf neighbors until every American military base in the region is shut down permanently. The economic damage flowing from that closed waterway is accelerating every single day, and it is already reaching into the pockets of ordinary people on every continent. Brent crude climbed to its highest level since July 2022. American gas prices have surged 24% since the war began just 17 days ago. Qatar's energy minister has warned publicly that if the conflict continues, Gulf producers may be forced to declare force majeure and halt all exports entirely. The UN World Food Program has warned that the disruption to the strait is already driving long-term increases in global food prices because nearly 50% of global fertilizer exports also pass through this region. Without fertilizers, crop yields fall. When crop yields fall, food prices rise. When food prices rise, the countries that can least afford it suffer first and suffer hardest. Formula One canceled the Bahrain Grand Prix and the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix scheduled for April. Global aviation in the Gulf is in chaos. This is what a closed strait looks like in practice. It does not just raise the price of gasoline. It begins dismantling the architecture of global food security. Now look at what is happening on the battlefield itself. Because while Trump is struggling to build a coalition, the war is expanding in every direction simultaneously. Israel told CNN it is planning to strike thousands of targets over the next 3 weeks, with potentially more to follow. Israel is simultaneously running critically low on ballistic missile interceptors, according to Semaphore. A cluster missile struck the streets of Tel Aviv, as seen in CCTV footage released by Israeli police, injuring at least 3 people. Approximately 200 U.S. troops have been wounded or injured in 7 different countries during the ongoing military campaign, according to U.S. Central Command. 13 American soldiers have been killed. 6 of those 13 died when their Air Force refueling aircraft crashed in western Iraq. The plane had no ejection systems and no parachutes. There was no way out for those 6 men. Iran launched new waves of raids on southern Lebanon, and the Israeli military said it was launching limited ground operations against Hezbollah. The death toll in Lebanon has risen to 850, including more than 100 children. Hundreds of thousands of people have been evacuated from southern Lebanon as Israel expands what it calls limited ground operations. 5 governments issued a joint statement warning that a planned major Israeli ground offensive in Lebanon could trigger devastating humanitarian consequences and could lead to a protracted conflict. They said it must be averted. Israel ignored them and began the operations anyway. The war that was supposed to be surgical and contained is now burning in Iran, Lebanon, Iraq, Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and it touched Dubai International Airport just yesterday. For the first time in history, Iran attacked all Gulf Cooperation Council countries: Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, every single one of them simultaneously. Inside Washington, things are becoming politically uncomfortable in ways that are impossible to ignore. Chair of the Federal Communications Commission, Brendan Carr threatened the licenses of broadcasters who broadcast what he called fake news in connection with mainstream coverage of Iran, accusing outlets of running hoaxes and news distortions. The New York Times and the Wall Street Journal were specifically named. In a country built on the First Amendment, the government is now threatening to strip broadcast licenses from news organizations for their coverage of an ongoing war. That is not a small development. That is a government trying to control what its own citizens can see and hear about a war being fought in their name with their money. Meanwhile, more than 250 American organizations have signed a formal letter demanding that Congress halt all funding for the war. They point out that $11.3 billion was spent in the first 6 days alone. Money, they argue, is being stripped from food benefits, health care, and domestic infrastructure that millions of Americans depend on. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky revealed that the U.S. military has reached out to Ukraine several times seeking expertise on how to intercept and destroy Iranian-designed Shahed attack drones, even as Trump publicly says he does not need Ukraine's help. Read that again carefully. Trump told the world he does not need Ukraine. His own military is privately calling Kyiv asking for drone expertise. The gap between what this administration says publicly and what it is doing privately is growing wider every single day. Leaders of the UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Bahrain have also contacted Zelensky about drones. The Gulf states being attacked by Iranian drones are turning to Ukraine for help, not to NATO, not to Washington's coalition, to Ukraine. The Kremlin said discussions are taking place between Moscow and Washington about ways of cooperating to help stabilize energy markets, reeling from the conflict and the effective closure of the strait. Russia and America, adversaries in Ukraine, are now quietly talking about energy market stabilization because both countries understand that a permanently closed Strait of Hormuz damages the global economy in ways that hurt everyone, including Moscow. This war is reshaping geopolitical relationships in real time in ways that will outlast the conflict itself, regardless of how it ends. Trump said the U.S. has literally destroyed everything on Iran's Karg Island except for its oil facilities, but left the door open to targeting them in the future. Trump also said he might hit the island again just for fun if Iran continues interfering with ships passing through the strait. Just for fun. The island that handles 90% of Iran's crude oil exports. The phrase "just for fun" attached to a decision that could send global oil prices past $150 and trigger a worldwide economic depression. That is the language being used by the Commander-in-Chief of the United States military on day 17 of a war that has already killed over 2,200 people across the Middle East. UNESCO confirmed damage to Golistan Palace in Tehran, the 17th century Chehel Satun Palace, the Masjid-e-Jame Mosque, which is Iran's oldest Friday mosque, and buildings close to the Khorramabad Valley, which includes prehistoric caves providing evidence of human occupation dating back 63,000 years. 63,000 years of human history damaged or destroyed in 17 days of airstrikes. Iran said at least 56 museums, historic buildings, and cultural heritage sites have been damaged by U.S. and Israeli strikes. These are not military targets. These are the physical records of human civilization itself, and they are being turned to rubble. Iran's national soccer team announced it would not participate in the 2026 World Cup, with the sports minister saying the team would not be participating whether Trump says the team is welcome or not. FIFA has not announced a contingency plan. A team has never been removed from a World Cup in the modern era. The conflict is now reaching into spaces that have never been touched by war before, from global energy markets to UNESCO heritage sites to international football tournaments. Here is the reality that no one in Washington is willing to state plainly. This war was sold as a precise and rapid operation to eliminate Iran's nuclear threat permanently. 17 days later, Iran's nuclear sites have been struck, but Iran's Supreme Leader is still issuing orders from hiding. Iran's foreign minister is on camera saying Tehran never asked for a ceasefire and is ready for a long war. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. Dubai's airport was hit by drones yesterday. Oil is above $100. Every NATO ally has refused to commit. America is asking Ukraine for drone advice while publicly claiming it needs no help. The FCC is threatening news organizations for their coverage. 250 American groups are demanding Congress cut the funding. And Trump is telling reporters he might bomb Karg Island again just for fun. This is not what a controlled military operation looks like. This is what strategic overextension looks like when it starts colliding with reality. Every day this war continues, the Strait of Hormuz stays closed a little longer, the global economy fractures a little further, the chances of a ground war in Lebanon grow larger, and the window for any kind of negotiated exit narrows. China is watching and calculating. Russia is watching and talking to Washington quietly. Every country on Earth that depends on Gulf energy, which is nearly every country on Earth, is now making emergency plans for a world where this waterway never fully reopens to normal traffic. The question was never whether the world would pay the price for this war. The world is already paying it at the gas station, at the grocery store, in canceled flights, in disrupted shipping, in rising food costs that will take years to come back down. The question now is how much higher the price goes before someone in a position of real authority finds the courage to stop it. Subscribe right now because this war is changing every single hour, and you need to be the person who actually understands what is happening and why it matters to every country on Earth, including yours. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think Trump's allies refusing to send warships means America has already lost the diplomatic battle for this war? And if Iran's new supreme leader is still alive and still issuing orders from hiding after 17 days of the most intense bombing campaign in decades, what does that tell you about how this conflict actually ends? Drop your answer in the comments right now.